All right, so last week we got to this point. We're talking about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and it contains two sites that are considered to be holy. And one of those sites is where Jesus was crucified at Calvary or Golgotha, and the tomb, which is where Jesus was laid. And this site here, where this church has been built, is the site where is most commonly thought to be uh, the site where these two main events occurred. And we talked about a little bit last week. After Jesus was gone, there were there was a king, Domitian, and his mother was Herodias, I think was her name, and she wanted to build these churches on top of these holy sites to, I guess, protect them. Was what she was thinking, and so we will see more. We've seen already there are a few churches at sites that were considered to be holy sites, and this is one of those. And so that's why this church is put on top of this site. At one point, there was a temple to a false god that was built over this site intentionally, and there were false idols put right over the site where the crucifixion took place, where the tomb of Jesus were at, in order to cover that up. And so um, you have many people that don't want us to know about Jesus and about him coming to this earth. And so they tried to cover it up, and then later it was uncovered, and then this church put on that site to protect it, basically, I guess, was their thinking. And so
we'll. Is this where Jesus was crucified?
Yes, on this site, and I'll show you in just a little bit. It'll be maybe a little bit easier for you to kind of see.
Is there weekly worships there?
I don't think so.
Okay, just a building.
Yes. What we found was there was a lot of churches everywhere. There wasn't weekly worships. There might be a yearly special event there, or in some cases there might be a wedding or a funeral or a name day service. It's something they have in Greece. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But no, not. And so I'll show you a few pictures here. These are the pictures inside the church. I just want you to see how lavish they decorated these places. Paintings that must have taken years, and the light fixtures and gold and jewels everywhere. And so in some ways, whenever we got in this church, I think a lot of us kind of felt like they really ruined all this, the site, by putting all this gaudiness here. But, as we've talked about, there were some that wanted to destroy this site completely, and there's others trying to protect it. And this, is what's going on. We talked about how many times that Jerusalem had been sieged and recaptured and retaken. And so you've had many, many people that wanted to have this site, this area, of Jerusalem as their own. And so whoever's in control, they wanted to change things, and depending on their view, either cover this up or bring this to light, about Jesus. So there were many people in here. It was very chaotic. It was very hard to even hear your guide, talking and explaining things to you. So it was just a lot of confusion, to tell you the truth, and trying to keep up with it. But I just kept trying to keep in my mind thinking about what would it have looked like in Jesus' day. All right, so this is the tomb of Jesus. This over the tomb. The tomb is below this, and over this was a shrine. In the 19th century, they put this shrine over it. It's called an aedicule. Um, it's like an above ground shrine, burial site. And so this is supposed to, I mean, you look how this is decorated, with all the gold and jewels and all this. And this is a side view of it. There was a line there. You could go in and actually see the tomb, but it would have taken about 3 to 4 hours to get through that line. And so we didn't have that time to do that. According to what I'd read about that site, there was not much left of the tomb because, like I said, they covered it up and then they had uncovered it. And so, some of that was lost. And so,
Souvenir hunters probably took pieces.
yes, that's right. Yeah. And supposedly there was a piece of the cross that Herodia, the mother Herodias, had found when they uncovered that, destroying that one temple that was built there to the false gods. Once they uncovered that, supposedly she found a piece of the cross and kept that, But, none of that really matters. What we just need to focus on, in my mind, is that this site is one of the locations that is said to be where these things happen. If you take a look at this drawing here, this was the best thing that I could find. There where that cross is at, that's the rock of Golgotha, the Calvary. And so if you look there, you can see the outline of the church. And then below that, you see the way the land is laid there. And so you've got this. We talked about last week that this Calvary would most likely have been in this site that was a rock quarry. Whenever the original temple was built, they most likely removed stone out of this area in order to build that first temple. And so the temple would have been right here, and then just nearby, they would have taken that stone out of the land there in order to build those sites. And so that's kind of why this would have been kind of down in a pit, I guess you would say, down in this rock quarry. But down in there was this rock here that stood above the rest of the ground in that location. And so that would have been the site where the cross was at. Now, this is according to, archaeologists and historians who have studied all these sites and these locations. And so we'll take them at their word, and realize that it could be, somewhere near that site as well. But then if you look over here, this is the site where the tomb was at. Okay, where that aedicule is over it right now. Because in both these sites are inside that church, the Church of the Sepulchre. Okay, and so this just kind of gives you an idea maybe how far apart they were. They weren't that far apart. And we know in the Bible it tells us that the tomb was not very far from the cross of Calvary. All right, any questions about that or any comments? Yeah.
So how would they get all the way over there from the cross?
Well, they took Jesus' body down and carried it over to that tomb and laid him to rest there. They needed to do that before night because the Passover was coming. And so that was done rather quickly. And then the ladies, Mary and Martha and Mary Magdalene, they were all coming on Sunday morning to finish, Jesus' burial, wrap him and do it according to their customs. And that's when they found that he had risen. He was not in the tomb.
Oh.
Okay. So it wasn't very far away. Like I said, maybe as far as from here to the back of the building, something that type of distance away from the cross. All right. Any comments? that upset you to see this, or does it? Okay.
Well, man has destroyed so many things, not only physical, but the teaching and doctrine of Christ. They
Yeah.
abused it, added to, taken away. So I hope we're upset with that more than this physical
Yeah,
possibility.
well, that's what I mean. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of upsetting to see how all this was handled and done. But I mean, you're talking about 2,000 years since then, you know, and many takeovers of power since that time. And so that's how the historians tell us that happened. Okay. All right. So here in this photo, the person here is about to purchase 3 stuffed camels for her grandchildren. You can see those camels on the right there, those little pink and blue stuffed camels. But you can see this is kind of how the shopping was in this old part of town. Pete, you were asking about the shopping in that area, and all of this was in what they call the old city of Jerusalem. And so you had many streets that were like this, and you just went down through there, and you might have this area here where Bonnie's about to buy these stuffed animals, and then you go a little further down, it might be a t-shirt shop. You go a little further down, and it might be some type of food that they're selling, you know, or bread or various things like that. And so you can see on the upper left here, they had scarves and that kind of thing there. And so that would be kind of like a marketplace, I guess you would say. Okay.
And many places are virtually like that.
They are. Yeah.
Istanbul has a market that's very
Exactly.
similar.
We went to that place as well. It was just like this. And so that's pretty common. Yeah. Okay.
Are the prices on those products negotiable? I mean,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I've been in Turkey and you know they have stuff like this,
Yes.
and you might get it at half price if you call it long enough.
That's right. That's right. And actually, after we left Ephesus, we went to a place that makes Turkish rugs. And they do a big, have you seen that?
Oh man.
It's
Yeah.
a demonstration, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, they come out and roll rug after rug after rug, and they spin them in the air, and they do all these things trying to get you to buy these rugs.
Give you tea to drink.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or wine.
I didn't have any wine.
I didn't either, of course. But I mean, why would they want to give you wine?
So you lose your.
Loosen you up a little bit and maybe make a purchase, right? And so but yes, they were expecting you to negotiate with them. And so they would start out at $5,000, $7,500 a rug, you know, for a living room size rug. But this is special because it's a Turkish rug, so it has double knots made, you know, that's the things they tell you. And so, yes, yeah, most of these places, you know, in any little place like that, you could bargain with them and they expected it. All right, this site here is the Palestinian village on the West Bank as we were leaving out of Jerusalem. This, I believe, is Bethany. And so this is where Mary, Martha, and Lazarus lived and where Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. So this is just outside of Jerusalem. This is 2 strangers riding a camel to the Dead Sea. We were on our way to the Dead Sea from Jerusalem there, and you're running down the highway. It's just like an interstate like you have here. You pull off to the side there, and there's this little site here, and this guy walks up with his camel, and he's offering camel rides. And so, how much you think that camel ride was?
I don't know.
$6.
Is that all?
That
Yeah, but it lasted about 5 minutes.
that's exactly.
You got on there and you walked around here and you came back and took a couple pictures and you got off. And then the next 2 get on, and it was $6 a person, so that's $12 right there. But it was still, you know, a great experience. And just about everybody on the bus got on there. All right, so this is a look at the Dead Sea. And the biblical archaeologists believe that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were here at this site, right here at the Dead Sea. Maybe on one end of that Dead Sea area, they think. We know what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? God rained down the fire and brimstone because of the sin there. And so at the southeastern corner of the Dead Sea, we didn't see this, but I found this on Google, so I'm sure it's accurate. But at the southeast corner of the Dead Sea is a salt rock plug known today as Mount Sodom. On its slopes, which are formed by a combination of gypsum, salt, and limestone and chalk, can be seen strange formations of salt-like pillars. Let's see. These pillars are often pointed out to tourists as by the nickname of Lot's wife. So that may or may not be true, I don't know. But the Dead Sea is fed mainly by the Jordan River and a few smaller streams and rivers. The Dead Sea receives an average of 6 or 7 million tons of daily inflow with no outlet for the water to escape except through evaporation. The extreme heat and dry conditions of the region produce an exceptionally high rate of evaporation. Even with no outflow of water, the Dead Sea's surface rises no more than 10 to 15 feet a day. This is also the lowest point on Earth. All right, so you can see the mountains behind there. This is what they call mountains there, you know, the smaller hills, you know, but it looks foggy all the time, and that's the evaporation coming up off of that sea. Any questions?
Do you know the depth of it, the deepest depth?
I don't. I do know that it's getting smaller and smaller. And the Jordan River, in some places, is actually close to a stream, they say. So it's all dwindling down too.
What's the temperature there? Is it hot?
Yes, very
Like
hot.
us, or-
Yeah, probably about like it's been this week or a little hotter. Yeah, it's very hot.
Did you go swimming?
Well, there you go. We floated in the Dead Sea. It's the content of salt is so high, you can't help but float. It's hard to get your feet underneath you after you've been floating.
No
And
drownings.
right, true. But you might get salt water in your eyes. Believe me, that hurts. They tell you, you know, to don't get that water in your eyes. Don't flip over on your stomach and get that water in your eyes. But it's really hard to do. And so we had a pretty good time with that. You can see this guy. This is Rod, who was with us. We were just basically trying to get out of the water there. You know, it was really strange. But anyway, this water in the salt content and everything, the minerals in that water is said to be medicinal, you know, and very helpful for lots of ailments. As soon as there's a little center there, whenever the bus pulls up and you go in, as soon as you get in, they start selling you. Here's soaps made from this place, and oils, and all these products, right? Lotions. Let me show you how great they work and all that. They're trying to sell you as soon as you walk off the bus. Same thing was true in Bethlehem too. When we went to Bethlehem, that's the first stop we made, is this big shop that just sold souvenirs. And they do a whole spiel, you know, to try to sell you products and tell you how this place has been here for many generations and all this. These carvings are hand carved and all this, you know. And so They make their money off of tourism for sure. It's a big deal there. So I wonder now, with all the uprising going on, I'm sure it's hurting their tourism, and so it's going to hurt their economy. Same thing was true in Greece. Greece is very dependent on tourism as well, and during COVID, that just shut everybody down because nobody was traveling. So there were a lot of people really hurt financially. All right, any comments?
That guy kind of looks like Greg.
That's just funny.
Yeah, that was an experience there. That was something you kind of had to do, because how many chances are you going to have an opportunity to get in the Dead Sea and experience that? And so,
Are there fish in there? Probably not.
I don't know. I don't know. I doubt it, being that
Too salty.
but
Saltwater fish.
it could be. But that's more salty than any lake or ocean. So I don't know about that. They didn't mention that, actually. All right, so this was a site that we were told was the Mount of Transfiguration. Let's take a look at that. Let's turn to Matthew.
17.
Yes, sir. Matthew 17, verse 1 through 9. Matthew chapter 17, verse 1 through 9. It says, 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, his brother, and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his garments became as white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with them. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 tabernacles here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. And when the disciples heard this, they fell down on the face on the ground and were terrified. And Jesus came to them and touched them and said, Get up and do not be afraid. And lifting up their eyes, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus commanded them, saying, Tell the vision to no one until the Son of Man has risen from the dead. All right? That's an amazing story, amazing thing that happened there. It was God's way of telling those disciples that Jesus is the Son. He is my Son, and you worship him, not Moses and Elijah. This is the site where that happened.
How do they know that?
Well, it's like everything else.
Oh, just kind
They have to take all the writings and everything, all the information that they've got from those sites and try to put it all together and say, this most likely is that site. All right, so then after that, we went to Caesarea. And this is a very interesting place. This is our group that went with us, 21 of us. And the city became the capital of the Roman province of Judea in 6 AD. The population at that time was around 30,000, they believe. It was built by King Herod. The first biblical figure associated with Caesarea was Philip, who shared the gospel in Caesarea after a great persecution, expelled many believers from Jerusalem. Why was that persecution happening? Paul had a lot to do with that, right? Paul and many others were persecuting Christians, and so Christians were scattering. And so that was one of the reasons that Philip came here. So Paul was heavily involved in the persecution. Eventually, Philip settled down in Caesarea, living there with his family and hosting other believers at his home. We can read about that in Acts chapter 21, verse 8. tells us there that Philip allowed them to come in his home and stay there while they were in the city. Paul traveled through Caesarea several times. Early in his ministry, when his life was threatened in Jerusalem, the believers there helped him escape through Caesarea to Tarsus. Undoubtedly aboard a Caesarean ship, most likely. After his second missionary journey, Paul passed through Caesarea on his way to Antioch, using his time in Caesarea as an opportunity to visit Jerusalem, which is about 52 miles away. We can read about that in Acts chapter 18, verse 22. On his famous and final recorded trip to Jerusalem near the end of the book of Acts, Paul stayed in Caesarea with Philip for several days, meeting with Agabus the prophet and enjoying fellowship with local believers. That we can read in Acts chapter 21, verse 8 through 16. The disciples in Caesarea begged Paul not to go to Jerusalem, but eventually they traveled with him when they realized that he could not be persuaded not to go. We know that many of those men saw visions of Paul being whipped and tied with the belt and things like that. And so they were warning Paul, don't go to Jerusalem. This is what's going to happen. And Paul himself knew that. There were many times that Paul saw visions of what would happen to him before he went to that city, but he went anyway, knowing what was going to happen to him. Later, Paul was imprisoned in Caesarea for years, facing several trials there before various Roman officials with whom he was able to share the gospel. If we look at Acts 23, chapter 23 through 26, we see multiple times there where Paul was teaching a lot of those Roman soldiers that he was imprisoned by, being held and guarded by. Caesarea was the home of Cornelius, the centurion. Peter visited Cornelius in his home, and Cornelius and his household were converted. And so that's a major event that happened in this city. Caesarea was also the location of Herod Agrippa's death at the hand of the angel of God. Let's look at Acts chapter 12, verse 23. Let's see what that says. Acts 12:23. So Herod was speaking to the people at this time. He was very angry with the people. And verse 21 says, on an appointed day, Herod, having put on his royal apparel, took his seat on the rostrum and began delivering an address to them. And the people kept crying out, "The voice of a God and not of a man." And immediately an angel of the Lord struck him because he did not give God the glory, and he was eaten by worms and died. Okay, so this is where this took place. God's constantly telling us that he means business, right? We see plenty of examples in his word that we better do things the way he asks us to do, because there's going to be dire consequences otherwise. So there's no reason that things are things are different today.
And all that it seems they did was remain silent.
Mhm.
He took their
Yeah.
praise and just
That's true.
received it.
That's true. All right, here, Herod also started the aqueduct from 8 miles away in Mount Carmel, to this location. And so there on Mount Carmel, they had ways to gather the rainwater that in those areas, and they would make an aqueduct all the way into the city in order to get fresh water. And remember, these locations here are desert locations, so the rain didn't come very often. Elijah fought here against the Baal prophets. So a lot of biblical events happened here. There in the background is the Mediterranean Ocean. And to the right is the Hippodrome Stadium. I'll show you a little better picture of that. The Hippodrome, as it was called, was built by Herod the Great for the inauguration of the city in 9 to 10 BC. It was the venue of the Actian Games instituted by King Herod in honor of the Emperor Augustus. The games were held every 4 years, and the games included horse and chariot races, athletic events, gladiatorial combat, and hunting. And so that site is still there today. And so you can see there, all that in the background there is seating, like our stadium seats. And they would have been watching the games, and then the Mediterranean Ocean would have been in the background. It was a beautiful sight there. This sign says this: researchers believe that this may be where Paul was tried and imprisoned according to the New Testament, Acts chapter 24, verse 27. But after 2 years had passed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. And wishing to do the Jews a favor, Felix left Paul imprisoned. Okay, so this is the opening that leads into the underground prison. They were excavating at this site while we were there as well. They were over here on the left side of how that picture is taken there. They were working over there clearing out. But they thought that there might have been a courthouse type area above ground and just to the side there of where this prison was at. And that was probably where Paul was tried at and then immediately taken to this prison. He was confined here for 2 years. Comments? This is the ruins of King Herod's castle in Caesarea, right on the Mediterranean Sea. He had pools in his castle. And, great, extravagant living by their standards and even today's standards here. Really. The things that they were able to build and if you had a swimming pool in that day, that's very, very extravagant because most people are struggling just to get water to drink. So, because like I said, we're in a desert climate, and so.
Would that have been a freshwater pool or saltwater?
I don't know. That's a good question. It could have been saltwater. It would have been easy enough to bring in. Yeah, maybe true. All right, this is some of our group at the latrine next to the stadium. Here at this site, this is kind of coming out of where that Hippodrome Stadium is at. And our guide stopped there. It was kind of a narrow passageway through there. And he said, let's stop here and talk, so everybody just kind of starts sitting down wherever they would. And then after the fact, he points out that this was a latrine during that time. And these ladies that are sitting on the upper part of those rocks, there would just be openings in between those rocks, and that's where you went to the bathroom at. And you can see this trough down at the bottom. That would have been, it would have go any further than that.
Do they jump up, move?
they all got a little nervous after that. Whether this was all enclosed, surely it was, but that's how it looked at our day. All right, so this is a look at the city of Nazareth, where Jesus was from. Nazareth was a major Arab city, according to Luke. Nazareth was the home of the village of Mary, as well as the site of the Annunciation, which is what they call it. This is when the angel Gabriel informed Mary that she would give birth to Jesus. That would have happened here in Nazareth. According to Matthew, Joseph and Mary resettled in Nazareth after returning from the flight from Bethlehem to Egypt. Remember, an angel came and told Joseph to take his family out of there to Egypt in order to protect against Herod trying to kill him. But at some point later, they came back to Nazareth and lived there for a time. This is the well where they said Mary went to gather water. Most of the homes didn't have running water inside. The palaces, yes, sometimes they did have water running into those. But the homes would not have had, and so in the morning the ladies would go out with a pitcher of some sort and gather water and bring back for the day. And so this was what they told us was the site where Mary came to gather water. All right, this is the Basilica of the Annunciation, is what they call it. Now, a basilica is defined as an ancient Roman architecture. It was a large public building with multiple functions, typically built alongside the town's forum. This might have been a Catholic type of building from the things that I've read about this. But they call it a basilica. And this is a look inside there. And so it's set up, like a church would look on the inside, especially like a Roman Catholic church would look on the inside. And but this is one of two places that claim to be the site where the angel Gabriel came and spoke to Mary and announced that she would give birth to Jesus. We can read about that account in Luke 1, verse 26 tells us about that. And so here you have this site there. This is what they told us were the ruins of the home that Mary lived in. And so, again, there was a church built on a site that they considered to be holy. And so, how that looked when Mary lived there, of course, we don't know. Any comments about that? All right, now this is the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is Israel's largest freshwater lake. It's approximately 33 miles in circumference, and it's about 13 miles long and 8 miles wide. The maximum depth is about 141 feet. And so this is what it looked like as we were coming in to the city there to come in to, we stayed here, I think, one night and visited all these sites around the Sea of Galilee. To me, this part is just as interesting as Jerusalem, because this is the main site where Jesus' ministry was at. So this is a look at the Sea of Galilee at night. We went down there that night, and that's what it looked like. And this is a boat on the Sea of Galilee. You see how that looks behind that? How that looks foggy all around there? And that's the evaporation. And so at some points during the day, it might look clear around there. At other points during the day, probably the afternoon more so, and depending on what the heat is. But then it may look foggy like that all around it. But there were mountains all around this area, and so the sea was kind of in a bowl around this. It's mostly mountains and hills around that.
Are there rivers that flow into that? Or do you know?
Well, the Jordan comes out of that, right? And flows there to the Dead Sea.
And they can navigate, I guess, the Jordan River.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure. I'll show you some pictures in a minute of the Jordan, but I didn't see any location where the Jordan came into this. But if you look at the maps, right, Greg,
So Jim,
make sure I'm correct on that. You have the Sea of Galilee, and then you have the Jordan River coming down to the Dead Sea,
yes,
and it connects those. And so, but where on here, I don't know. I've got another picture here in a minute of kind of a drawing. Sea of Galilee, we might be able to tell from that. This is a picture of a 520-year-old olive tree that is right near the Sea of Galilee there. So that was pretty neat. All right, this is the Jordan River here. This is where Jesus was baptized by John at some point on the Jordan River. We don't know specifically. No, but from what I understand, this is one of the wider points nowadays. But I don't know. This is the site they brought us to. Many people are being baptized there every day. They will rent you a baptismal garment and a towel and allow you to go down and be baptized, and there was just people everywhere being baptized or waiting in line to be baptized.
were they being immersed or sprinkled?
They were being immersed, most of them, but I saw a few of them being immersed by women. Women. All right, that was the bell. We'll stop right there. We will talk more next week if y'all would like.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you, Greg? Okay. We've got a little ways more to go still, so we'll start right there. Okay, thank you for your attention.